G'day, it's Greg Newson, Naturopath, Herbalist and Nutritionist from the Vitality and Wellness Centre, and welcome to our latest podcast on the role of the small intestine and how its function is essential for the absorption of nutrients from our diet. In this podcast, we're going to look at the various roles of the small intestine, along with common signs and symptoms that indicate poor function, plus health conditions that can contribute to poor intestinal function, and what causes the small intestine not to function as effectively as it should. And of course, we're going to focus on the abundant gifts of Mother Nature and what she has to offer to help heal and regenerate the small intestine back to its former glory. Today's podcast is brought to you by Naturopath, supplements with absolute purity, no added chemicals or excipients to bind tablet ingredients together, make manufacturing cheaper, fill empty spaces in capsules, or increase the volumes in powders. All herbal blends are alcohol-free and all supplements contain no synthetic or semi-synthetic flavourings, colourings or sweeteners, just pure active ingredients. So you can feel confident and comfortable in knowing that your supplements are as close to nature as possible. Check them out today. Well, the small intestines, what is it and what does it do? Well, it's actually a long coiled tube. It's about 6 metres long or 20 feet in length, which is pretty long when you think about it, but it plays a pivotal role in breaking down the food we eat and absorbing the nutrients into the bloodstream. Now, this 6 metre tube is divided into 3 sections: the duodenum, the jejunum, which is not an easy word to pronounce, and the ileum. And each section has a unique role to play in the digestive process. So the duodenum, this is the first section right after the stomach, and it's where the partially digested food known as chyme enters, and it enters with, and when it enters, I should say, it's mixed with bile from the liver and the gallbladder, as well as the digestive juices from the pancreas. And it's here in the duodenum where all the fats and the proteins and the carbohydrates are broken down into microscopic particles so they can be absorbed. Now, once the food moves from the duodenum, it travels into the jejunum, which is the middle section of the small intestines. And the jejunum is primarily responsible for absorbing the nutrients from our food. So within its makeup, it has many folds and crypts and caverns and cavities and all this sort of stuff, and it contains these finger-like projections called villi and microvilli. Just think of the fingers on the end of your finger, or the end of your hand, I should say. If that whole part of the jejunum contains these finger-like projections, and they float back and forward in intestinal fluid and absorb the nutrients from our food. Now, once it passes from the jejunum, it then goes into the ileum, and most of the nutrients absorb, but if there's any left, the ileum will absorb them, but its main job is to absorb vitamin B12 and the bile salts. Now, just as a bit of a side issue, here in traditional Chinese medicine, the small intestines is seen as the essential organ responsible for separating the clear from the turbid, which basically means it's essential for separating what is useful for the body and what is not. The small intestines is also closely related to the heart and plays a role in mental clarity and discernment. It also has strong ties to the bladder. Now, there are certain conditions or certain health problems that can affect the small intestine. So I'm going to touch on those very briefly. The first one is celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease in where the person ingests or eats gluten, and that leads to damage of the small intestines by the immune system. And symptoms can include diarrhea, weight loss, fatigue, anemia, bloating, and the consequences of celiac disease is malabsorption, which then can lead to deficiencies in any mineral such as iron, calcium or magnesium, or any other essential vitamin or mineral. Another condition is Crohn's disease, which is a type of inflammatory bowel disease that can affect any part of the gastrointestinal tract, but often impacts the small intestine, particularly the ileum. And symptoms there can include abdominal pain, severe diarrhea, fatigue, weight loss, again, malnourishment. Anything that affects the small intestines is going to lead to malnourishment. And our consequences of Crohn's disease can include inflammation that can lead to narrowing of the intestines, fistulas, which is an abnormal connection between two body parts. It's basically a crack. So if you can think of a wall that's got a little bit of a crack in it, that can happen within the intestines. An anal fissure is quite common, which means that there's another hole that's been created by that crack, and quite painful. Irritable bowel syndrome is not a condition that affects the small intestines like Crohn's or celiac disease, but it's a disorder that's characterised by a group of symptoms such as bloating, gas, diarrhoea, constipation, abdominal cramps. And while IBS doesn't cause physical damage, it can significantly affect the quality of life and lead to things like nutritional deficiencies or altered digestion and absorption. Another condition that can affect the small intestine is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Commonly known as SIBO, is a condition where there is an abnormal increase in the population of bacteria within the small intestines, generally the harmful guys. These bacteria should not be there, and they can cause things like bloating, diarrhoea, abdominal pain, malabsorption. And when the food then, if there's that overgrowth of bacteria there and the food travels into the small intestines, they will actually consume that food and they will produce gas, which then can cause the bloating, the flatulence and all that sort of stuff. Now, this bacterial overgrowth can lead to chronic inflammation, which can then damage the intestinal lining, and then that results in nutritional deficiencies and then other digestive issues. Another common condition that can affect the small intestines is caused by a food, and that food is dairy, and the condition is lactose intolerance. So what happens there is once people consume a dairy product, there's a sugar within the dairy called lactose, and your body should naturally produce lactase, which as you age, it diminishes, or if you're of Asian descent or African American descent, or I think even Jewish descent, your body doesn't naturally produce a lot of lactase, and then that sugar ferments, causing the pain, the bloating, the gas, the diarrhea, all that sort of stuff. When we're kids, our mother's breast milk had lots of lactose in it, and our body naturally produced lactase. Now, once we were weaned off milk, a lot of kids went to dairy, so the body still continued to produce this lactase, but over time it goes, you're not a baby cow anymore, we need to come off that. And so that's why a lot of people, as they age, have a reduced ability to tolerate dairy. Another condition that can be quite painful for people is peptic ulcers, which are sores that develop in the lining of the stomach, the lower esophagus, or the small intestine, often due to the infection of H. pylori or the long-term use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as aspirin or ibuprofen. Now, this can lead to symptoms such as the burning pain if it goes back up, if it's in the stomach or even up to the esophagus, the bloating, and in severe cases, it will cause bleeding. And if that happens, it will show up as a black stool, or if it's very bad, you'll be vomiting blood. Either way, black stool or vomiting blood. Black stool if you haven't eaten a lot of licorice, or vomiting blood, go to the doctors, get yourself checked out. There are some common signs and symptoms that can tell us that one or all of those three sections within the small intestines cannot be working or may not be working properly. So if the duodenum isn't functioning properly, people can experience symptoms like nausea, vomiting, and an inability to digest fatty foods. If the jejunum is not working properly, people can experience gas and bloating, diarrhea, and that obviously is going to lead to malnourishment. If the ileum isn't functioning properly, people can suffer symptoms like chronic diarrhea, abdominal pain, issues that are related to a B12 deficiency such as anemia or neurological problems. If the bile salts are not reabsorbed properly, this can lead to chronic diarrhea and issues with fat digestion, so the stool can be quite yellow and foul and smelling, but then that can be also the same if the stomach's not working properly, or the pancreas is not working properly, or the duodenum's not working properly, or the jejunum. So, yeah. On top of those symptoms not working properly, if one part of the intestines isn't functioning to the best of its ability, it puts pressure on what's downstream. So when the duodenum's compromised, the lack of proper breakdown of the nutrients can cause undigested particles to pass down into the jejunum, which then can lead to the fermentation, cause the bloating, the gas and the discomfort, and then that leads to less effective nutrient absorption. Then that sets off a chain reaction reaction that affects every single cell within the entire digestive tract and then every single cell within the body, because every part of the body is getting malnourished. For example, insufficient absorption of iron and folate can lead to anemia, causing fatigue and weakness. A lack of calcium and magnesium absorption can lead to poor bone health, leading to osteoporosis. Furthermore, chronic malabsorption can weaken the immune system, making it more susceptible to infections and illnesses. If the ileum doesn't absorb the B12 or the bile salts effectively, a lack of B12 can lead to pernicious anemia, causing extreme fatigue, palpitations, even neurological issues such as numbness or poor memory problems. If there's malabsorption of the bile salts, that can lead to chronic diarrhea, which not only affects the quality of life, but can also lead to things like dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. So you can see that the small intestines are a crucial organ, and any deficiencies in its function can have serious consequences. So you may start to see why it's becoming very important to maintain a healthy, well-functioning small intestine. So it's not just essential for our digestive health, but for our entire body. If we just look at Chinese medicine, again, traditional Chinese medicine, mental confusion, restlessness, and painful urination are also linked to poor small intestine function due to the small intestine's relationship with the bladder and the heart. So what are the common causes of poor small intestinal function? Well, at the top of the list is a cause that if this was the top 40, this would be number one, pretty much 48 out of 52 weeks a year for the last 150, 200, 300 years, and that is the diet. It's never out of the top three. I don't think it's ever dropped down to number 4 in the hit parade. It's always in the top 3. And it's the leading cause of why our small intestines may not be functioning properly. I know that I'm starting to sound a bit like a broken record, but a diet high in processed foods, sugars, white flour products, additives, flavourings, colourings, and unhealthy fats can wreak havoc on the small intestines. And why? It's because these foods are nutrient dead and often lack fibre for essential optimal digestive health. Now, processed foods can also lead to an overgrowth of harmful bacteria and yeasts, which can inflame the intestinal lining. Additionally, the lack of dietary fibre can slow down digestion and impede the movement of foods through the digestive tract, leading to constipation and poor nutrient absorption. So why do we put ourselves through this and eat these foods? Well, I believe that there's no real one cause. We were never taught how to eat healthy foods at school. That was never part of, in my education, it was never part of my education. If we look at the radio, or we don't look at the radio, if we listen to the radio, watch the TV, social media, newspaper, periodicals, flyers, whatever, no one ever advertises a lemon or a grapefruit, beetroot, cauliflower, lettuce, tomato, capsicum. Nothing like that ever gets marketed, but we always get paraphernalia or marketing for black cola drinks, lollies, sugar, cakes, biscuits, all of those type of things, the flour food products, the tin products, the pre-made diets, the XYZ shakes and all this sort of stuff, and then nutrient dead foods. Mother Nature, I love Mother Nature, put all those nutrients into the fruits and the vegetables and the whole grains and the nuts and the seeds and legumes and pulses and beans and the grass-fed meats and the wild-caught seafood. Just ask yourself, how many times have you seen it raining lemonade, or have you seen rivers of black cola? Have you ever had to hunt down a bowl of wheat? Is there a chocolate biscuit tree? Is there a lolly tree or a potato chip tree? There isn't. You don't go and dig up potatoes out of the ground. They don't look like a crinkle cut chip, do they? No. So we've got to look at our food and look at it to be more natural. And those natural health, life-giving nutrients in those foods will benefit our small intestines, which, as we know, benefits all of us. Now, coming in a close second is a common 21st century problem, and that is excessive stress. So chronic stress can negatively impact the body, and in particular the digestive system, in multiple ways. It can lead to altered gut motility, which is the movement of the food through the intestines. It can lead to conditions like irritable bowel syndrome. Stress also reduces the blood flow to the intestines, impacting the digestive process, and then leading to symptoms like bloating, cramping, or irregular bowel motions, flatulence. On top of that, stress also disrupts the balance of the gut flora, the good guys within the gut, and it favours the growth of the harmful bacteria over the beneficial ones, which then leads to a condition called dysbiosis and can exacerbate quite severely SIBO. And SIBO negatively affects small intestinal function because there's the abnormal increase of bacteria within the small intestines, and this overgrowth can interfere with the absorption of nutrients, and then that leads to symptoms like bloating, pain, flatulence. As I mentioned earlier, the bacteria eat the food and poop out gas, which upsets us, and then that can cause diarrhea, it can cause constipation, it can cause malnourishment, and the presence of this excess bacteria then can produce toxins that irritate the intestinal lining, which then lead to damage and inflammation. Another common cause of poor small intestinal function is food sensitivities or allergies. Now, we've spoken about gluten and we've mentioned lactose in dairy, but you can be allergic to anything. One man's food's another man's poison. I may be able to eat apples, but you eat apples and you bloat up, or you get abdominal pain, or you get diarrhea, or it could be tomato, it could be a cucumber. But it can also be the flavourings, the chemicals, the additives in the synthetic or the man-made foods. So if you find after 3-4 hours or even less or a little bit longer that you get bloated or gassy or abdominal pain after eating a certain food, it's a pretty good indication that you may have an intolerance to it or a sensitivity to it. And you're going to be sensitive to a lot of things if you've got small intestinal problems because everything's inflamed and irritated down there anyway. As we've mentioned in previous podcasts, the role of the stomach and the pancreas are essential for proper digestion, and if they're not working properly, that can lead to small intestinal dysfunction. So if the food is not effectively broken down by the stomach or the pancreas, it allows larger particles to travel into the small intestine where they're fermented by the bacteria, and then this can lead to the bloating, the gas, the diarrhea, etc. And over time, this malnourishment from the stomach or the food's not being broken down properly from the stomach and the small intestines, that can then lead to malnourishment and then deficiencies in all the vitamins and minerals, etc., which then just leads to disease and premature aging. Now, unfortunately, there are some common pharmaceutical medications that can contribute to poor small intestinal function, and I mentioned one of those earlier, and that is the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as ibuprofen or aspirin or Mobix, Celebrex, Vioxx or naproxen. Now, these drugs work by lowering an enzyme called cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2. If the body has an increased amount of cyclooxygenase 2, that will cause inflammation. So those classes of drugs will lower cyclooxygenase 2, same as turmeric or ginger. Now, the problem is that they also lower cyclooxygenase number 1. Now, its role is to protect the gastric mucosa in the esophagus, the stomach, and the intestines from damage. And it does this by maintaining the proper secretions of mucus and maintaining adequate blood flow and regulating the repair and regeneration of the cells. Unfortunately, these drugs are a double-edged sword. They may reduce inflammation, but at the same time, they're degenerating our stomach and their intestines, which then leads to malabsorption, which then dries up inflammation further. Yeah. Other pharmaceuticals that can upset intestinal health are antibiotics because they disrupt the balance of the gut flora by killing the beneficial bacteria along with the harmful ones. Now, this disruption can lead to conditions like antibiotic-associated diarrhea and increase the risk of developing SIBO. Protein pump inhibitors like Nexium, Somac or Pariet are what the pharmaceutical industry uses to treat reflux and work by inhibiting the production of the hydrochloric acid within the stomach. Unfortunately, that mentality also then leads to nutrient deficiencies because if you lower the stomach acid levels and the stomach juices, you can't break the foods down effectively. When that happens, it leads to nutrient deficiencies. Nutrient deficiencies mean that the body and the intestines are not able to absorb the nutrients effectively. That can then lead to intestinal deterioration and inflammation. Long-term use of corticosteroids can cause thinning of the intestinal walls and lead to increased intestinal permeability, a condition called leaky gut syndrome, which then also increases the risks of infections such as dysbiosis or SIBO. Opioids, which are pain medication like morphine or codeine, slow down the gut motility, which is the ability of stuff to flow through the intestines quite readily, which then can lead to constipation and poor nutrient absorption. Chemotherapeutic medication can damage the lining of the intestines, which leads to inflammation, ulcers, and severe malabsorption. Okay, so we know a bit about the signs and the symptoms and the causes of poor small intestinal function, but what can we do ourselves to dramatically improve the health of our small intestines? Well, if we go back to the causes, the number one thing on this hit parade is still going to be eating a well-balanced diet. See, a well-balanced diet is the foundation for good health, but it's particularly important for the small intestine. Focus on whole, unprocessed foods that are rich in fibre and vitamins and minerals, and they are fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and legumes and pulses and beans. Now, fibre is very, very important for the small intestine. It's one of the small intestine's best friends. It helps keep things moving through smoothly, and it feeds the beneficial bacteria within the gut. So lots and lots of fruits and vegetables. Now, they're obviously packed with a lot of fibre, but also antioxidants and a whole heap of vitamins and minerals. Eating grass-fed meats or wild-caught seafood is an excellent source of proteins. Now, the proteins are necessary for the repair and maintenance of the intestinal lining, so they're quite important. Healthy fats such as avocados, nuts, seeds and olive oil provide essential fatty acids that support cell health and reduce the intestinal inflammation, whereas whole grains, including, say, things like brown rice, quinoa or buckwheat, are rich in fibre and essential nutrients that help not only move the stool and nourish the body, but they also help regulate blood sugar levels. Another thing that we can do to help the health of the small intestines is manage our stress. So do things that help you feel chilled and relaxed, whether that's getting out into nature, doing some exercise, reading a good book, watching a good movie, or spending time with family or loved ones. Now, managing stress is really important to help us assimilate the nutrients out of the food we eat, because when we're relaxed and chilled, the digestive system is able to function more efficiently and absorb the nutrients more effectively from our food. Now, if we're running around like a blue-ass fly and trying to do 4,000 things at once, or feeling overwhelmed and everything's crowding in on us, our sympathetic nervous system is overactivated. Well, that shunts the blood away from the stomach and the intestines, and it stops the digestive process. So the body's ability to absorb the nutrients out of the food when we eat, when we're stressed, is dramatically diminished. Now, there are lots of things that you can do to help reduce stress. Firstly, do things that you love to do. Now, some people, they like to exercise. Either it's yoga, meditation, deep breathing, walking in nature, practicing gratitude, or grounding themselves. Whatever it is, incorporate that into your daily routine. Staying hydrated is pretty important for the digestive system, so drink plenty of fresh filtered chlorine and fluoride-free water throughout the day. You see that water is extremely important to help dissolve the nutrients and minerals so they can be absorbed more efficiently through the intestinal tract. And besides that, it's pretty important to keep us alive. A week without water and we're dead, so pushing up daisies, so stay hydrated. Chew your food properly now and thoroughly. So proper chewing of food is the first step in the whole digestive process, and it can greatly aid the small intestine. So chewing the food breaks the food down into smaller particles, making it easier for the digestive enzymes and the stomach acid to work properly. It also mixes the food with saliva that contains the digestive enzyme amylase that starts breaking down carbohydrates. Now, the gold standard to chew your food is 20 to 30 times. Now, that can be quite difficult for people who only chew their food 4 or 5 times. Chew, down it goes. In that case, just double the chews. So if you're chewing your food 5, if you work out, I'm only having 5 chews and then I'm swallowing it, make it 10 chews until you can work up to that. So avoid trigger food. So if there's a certain food that makes you bloated or gassy or diarrhea or constipated or abdominal pain, just take it out of your diet. This gives your body the chance to recuperate from that allergen. And generally, if you avoid it for 6 months, the immune system can rebalance, and then you can slowly incorporate that food back in and then not have any severe reactions like you previously had. If you do, it's a food that's a bit more reactive and you may have to just avoid that for a lot longer. Exercise regularly. So if you're sitting on the couch and you're not doing much, it's time to get up and let those legs walk. So exercise is not only important for our overall health, but it plays a very important role in the health of the small intestine. So exercise increases the blood flow to the muscles and the organs, including the small intestine. Now this circulation delivers more oxygen and nutrients to the intestinal tissue, promoting health and function. Now physical exercise stimulates the muscles in the digestive tract, promoting regular contractions called peristalsis. Now, these contractions help move the food and the waste through the intestinal tract more efficiently. So you poop more, which is really, really good. Exercise has also been shown to have positivity, I'll get that word out in a minute, positively enhance the function of the gut microbiome. So it makes your good bacteria more healthy. And the important thing about a healthy microbiome is that it is essential for effective digestion and nutrient absorption. Now, regular exercise also has an anti-inflammatory effect throughout the body, including the gut. So exercise helps regulate the inflammatory response, which can reduce chronic inflammation, especially in people that suffer from inflammatory bowel disease. Exercise also helps reduce stress, which we've already spoken about. And then that's good for the digestion. It also helps prevent obesity, and which can then exacerbate any intestinal disorders. One other thing that you can do is probiotic-rich foods. Now, if you haven't got a dairy intolerance, actually there's a lot of yogurts out these days that coconut yogurt or oat yogurt. So you can have yogurts that contain fermented foods such as bacteria. There's kefir, there's sauerkraut, there's kimchi. If you can include some of those foods into your diet, that will help to rebalance the good and the beneficial gut bacteria. And they contain what we call prebiotic fibres as well. Let's check in with Mother Nature and see what she has to offer in the way of medicinal herbs and nutrients that help support the function of the small intestine. As per usual, she always has a great bag of tricks, and there's some quite beneficial herbs for the small intestines, and the primary herbs are the bitter herbs. Now, bitter herbs stimulate digestive secretions. Firstly, they stimulate the glands in the mouth to produce the saliva. They increase the stomach's ability to produce the gastric juices, as well as improving the pancreatic secretions of the digestive enzymes, all of which are needed by the small intestine so it can assimilate the nutrients out of the food more effectively and with lesser energy. Classic bitter herbs include dandelion and gentian root. Another class of herb that is very beneficial to the small intestines are demucilants. Now, these herbs soothe and protect the lining of the small intestine and reduce the inflammation and irritation that can occur there. So good examples of those herbs are slippery elm, aloe vera, and marshmallow root. Another equally important class of herbs are the antimicrobial herbs, and these herbs have properties that help reduce harmful bacteria, parasites, worms, or fungi within the gut and balance the gut microbiome. Now, good examples of these herbs are neem leaf, barberry, and wormwood. Anti-inflammatory herbs are also very beneficial as these herbs help reduce the inflammation within the gut. They promote healing and improve discomfort. Good examples of these herbs are turmeric, ginger, and white willow bark. In addition to herbs, there are some excellent nutrients that are specific for the small intestines. The first one would be the amino acid L-glutamine. Now, L-glutamine serves as the fuel for the cells lining the intestinal tract, promoting their repair and reducing intestinal permeability or leaky gut syndrome. Zinc is essential for enzyme function, immune health, and the repair of the intestinal lining. So zinc deficiency can impair digestion and absorption. A quick way of knowing if you need a little bit extra zinc in your diet is white spots on the fingernails, stretch marks, or recurring infections. Probiotics help maintain a healthy balance of gut flora, which are crucial for the digestion and overall gut health. So probiotics can also enhance nutrient absorption, improve gut mobility, or motility I should say, and strengthen the intestinal barrier. Vitamin D supports immune function and helps maintain the integrity of the intestinal barrier. So inflammation is an immunological disorder. Now, adequate levels of vitamin D are crucial for preventing and managing inflammation within the gut. So on a blood test, you want to aim for your vitamin D levels to be 75 or higher. Omega-3 fats that are found in seafood, flaxseed, hemp seed, and walnuts also have anti-inflammatory properties that can help reduce the inflammation within the gut. So what do I do in clinic to help patients improve the health of their small intestines? Well, obviously there's the diet and the exercise and the stress management and all that stuff that we've mentioned earlier, but there is some specific nutrients and treatment protocols that I will implement. Now, generally, most people with a gut problem suffer from some degree of dysbiosis or SIBO. Dysbiosis basically means too many bad guys and not enough good guys. And look, anyone that's got a dog or a cat knows that they're supposed to worm their dog or cat every month or 2 months or whatever it is to keep their insides healthy. Well, we're a warm-blooded animal and we're no different to our beloved pets. Generally, I'll do a 2-week course of the following supplements to help eradicate dysbiosis and promote the health of the good guys. I will use Naturovital Intestinal Cleanse that contains a whole heap of antimicrobial herbs to eradicate the harmful bacteria, parasites, fungal, etc. With that, I will use Naturovital Multibac 10, which is a multi-strain, 10-strain probiotic that helps improve the numbers of the good guys within the gut. And I will also use Naturovital Sacrobiotic, that is a probiotic. It is a prebiotic, and it also works by crowding out and suffocating the harmful bacteria. If you suffer from SIBO, you may need to do that for up to 6 weeks and follow the FODMAP diet. If H. pylori is present, I will also use Naturovital HP Support and Naturovital Sacrobiotic to destroy and crowd out the Helicobacter pylori that can be causing the peptic ulcers. If someone is suffering from inflammatory bowel disease, I will also include Naturovital inflammatory support, and I'll most probably get the patient to take that 10 ml 3 times a day, and they could be on that for 3 to 6 months while these other supplements are coming and going. That's the core supplement to help reduce the inflammation within the gut. So once we've eradicated the dysbiosis or dramatically reduced that, we'll then go on to repopulating the good guys within the gut and healing the intestinal wall. So for that, I will use Naturovital Intestinal Repair, which is a blend of glutamine, fibres, demucilin type herbs, zinc and vitamin D, all aid in the regeneration and the repair of the intestinal cells. I will still continue with Naturovital Multibac 10 and introduce Naturovital Revitalise. Now, Revitalise is a blend of prebiotic fibres. Now, prebiotic fibres are special types of fibres that are found in certain fruits and vegetables that nourish all of the beneficial gut bacteria in the microbiome. And lastly, I'll include Naturovital Digestive Support that contains a great array of bitter herbs that help stimulate stomach acid production, digestive enzyme production, which all in turn helps the small intestines assimilate the nutrients from the food more efficiently. Once the health of the small intestines has improved greatly, I generally move patients onto a maintenance phase where we keep the health of the small intestines as robust as possible. And to do that, I will use Naturovital Intestinal Maintain that contains a blend of fibres and demucilin type herbs that nourish and maintain the small intestinal health. Well, hopefully that's given you a lot more information on the importance of the small intestines, not only for our digestive health, but also our overall health due to its amazing ability to absorb the nutrients from our food. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, this is Greg. Live life and laugh loud.